Never shall innocent blood be shed. Yet the blood of the wicked shall flow like a river. The three shall spread their blackened wings and be the vengeful striking hammer of God. You people have been chosen to reveal our existence to the world. You will witness what happens here today, and you will tell of it later. All eyes to the front. You must watch, dear. It'll all be over soon.
Now you will receive us! We do not ask for your poor, or your hungry. We do not want your tired and sick.
It is your corrupt we claim.
It is your evil that will be sought by us.
With every breath, we shall hunt them down.
Each day, we will spill their blood till it rains down from the skies.
Do not kill, do not rape, do not steal. These are principles which every man of every faith can embrace.
These are not polite suggestions. These are codes of behavior. And those of you that ignore them will pay the dearest cost.
There are varying degrees of evil. We urge you lesser forms of filth, not to push the bounds and cross over into true corruption, into our domain.
For if you do, one day you will look behind you and you will see we three. And on that day, you will reap it.
And we will send you to whatever God you wish.
And shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee. Power hath descended forth from thy hand. Therefore may swiftly carry out thy command. So we shall flow ever forth to thee, and teeming with souls shall it ever be.
In nomine Patri.
Et Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
How far are we going to take this, Star?
The question is not how far. The question is, do you possess the Constitution? The depth of faith to go as far as is needed?
Hey guys,
Hello.
welcome to the resurgence of sanity. Hopefully, we can restore some sanity tonight. That's a good goal.
Almost noble, I would
We
say.
Why did sanity leave the world?
they were given over to a debased mind. They were blinded. Some given over to a debased mind, some blinded, some raised in concrete jungles for not understanding the world they live in, being more apart from nature, and forsaking traditions, forsaking scripture, and following the vain philosophy and imaginations of men.
So, based on that, maybe we should invent some new way of constructing society to make it work.
How's that worked out for everybody?
Well, we just haven't come up with the right solution.
Oh,
You know, guys like you, Nick, you just go back and beat on this tired old horse of patriarchy. Do you think that's the solution to everything?
no, but it is a solution. It's the natural order. It's hard to work against gravity, when you're free falling from an airplane, you think you're free, but you have no parachute, right? Reality will catch up to you eventually. Splat. No, of course, I'm a Christian. I think actually salvation through Jesus Christ, is the actual answer. But that also does not mean that you forget natural law, natural order, but that you are restored to follow natural order instead of the deceptions.
Are you saying that Christ is the head of you?
Yes.
Therefore, you're in a hierarchy as a man to Jesus Christ, and
Everybody's
as you are to Christ, the woman is to the man. I mean, man, the church doesn't teach that anymore, does it, Nick?
nah, they kind of gloss over that. I mean, they supposedly follow the Bible, but most of them they can't even follow the natural order and are actually worshiping God in vain or in confusion. They've left the basic things that the rest of the world pretty much already understood. And they thought, oh, because I have the spiritual freedom in Christ, here, let's throw out the natural order. Let's throw out the natural law. Oh, everybody's just equal.
Tactic
No
has left.
hierarchy is inescapable.
Tactic has left you a funny
Ah,
on sale by some guy named Delusion.
well, it sounds like Pilgrim's Progress, but I'd have to check my notes on that.
Well, hey,
know-
you could say delusion is a synonym for the devil.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a debased, deranged mind. That's a delusional mind, right?
Oh yeah.
We
you go.
need, the world has decided we need a new dynamic, a new natural order.
You got to wait
Okay,
till
well,
heaven,
hold on.
and
Wait
then
a
it's
minute.
not completely new either.
In the US, we had this thing called the Civil War. Now, nowhere in the Bible does it call slavery. Oh, I shouldn't use that word, but anyway, I did. A sin. We
Doesn't
fought
Well,
that
in
war
the Bible, right?
and we declared it evil. Now it's a sin. Okay? Therefore, the whole system has changed. So now we need a new reality. Now, I can say that thing is not a sin. Don't take that to mean that I'm advocating it, because I'm not. Okay? But sin is sin. And other things maybe not be good. But have you? I was reflecting on this week. Certain behaviors by men, in the eyes of women, are actually worse than sin. Have you ever thought about some things you do and whatnot that women absolutely, oh, that's weird, that's detestable, whatnot? It's not a sin. Yet that's so bad that she doesn't want anything to do with you. Yet, a white lie here and there, that's not so bad. Or divorcing her husband, that's not so bad. I think we're wrong in that area too. Certain behaviors or actions are that are seen as bad, like, well, Protestants or evangelicals, smoking and drinking. Oh, they're so bad.
no.
Oh,
Yet they read C.S.
not
Lewis, right?
not really. They're not really sins, but like that's super bad. I don't know.
Yeah,
Let's
where's that in
just
the
get
Bible?
back to
It's not. Yeah. So we're talking about patriarchy, old school patriarchy. We're going to bring up people like Beza, Theodore Beza, Philip Melanchthon, Martin Bucer, Zacharias Ursinus, Robert Roloff. I chose these guys because they're not normally people you would think that talk about patriarchy. I mean, I had this. It's from a book I did. I think it's still being edited. We'll see. But um, these are not guys that you go to for thinking about patriarchy, but they nonetheless talked about it. I mean, there's tons of guys that talked about this. Calvin, Knox, Luther, Bullinger, uh, even Zwingli, Oecolampadius, Roloff. You could think about Whitaker. You could Piscator, Horatius, and a lot of people in the Westminster Assembly, like Samuel Rutherford and others. But I got a whole book. It's got like 80, 90 chapters in it. So they talk about patriarchy. So what is patriarchy, guys? We've talked about that here before.
It's a natural order. It's ruled by the father.
Yeah. Pater and order. Arche. From the Greek words pater and arche, father and order. So it's father order or patriarchy. So it's the rule of fathers. Fathers are the heads in family, church, and society. It's rule by men, particularly fathers. That is the natural order. You can see, where do you see that in the Bible?
The kings.
Yeah.
When I think of patriarchs, I think of Abraham.
Yeah.
He's the father of many nations, many people. And didn't his wife Sarah call him Lord?
Yeah.
A small L.
1 Peter chapter
Small
3.
L. Didn't he follow God's commandment or direction to be willing to sacrifice his son? Okay, so there was a power greater than him, but yet everybody kind of went along with what he said.
Mm-hmm. No, Genesis chapter 2 and 3, Adam was the head. And what did he get in trouble for? For listening to his wife instead of rebuking her, correcting her. And did all mankind fall on Eve, or did all mankind fall on Adam?
On Adam, because
Yes.
the man was held responsible for the actions of the woman.
Right. And Numbers chapter
Well,
30. Go ahead,
what's
Steve.
that one? No, go ahead.
So Numbers chapter 30, who's responsible for the decisions of the family? If there's a daughter, it's the father. And that transferred authority is given to the husband. It's the same authority. He can invalidate her decisions when he hears of them. He's responsible. He has authority. He has the power to carry it out. You see this also in the New Testament where, the husband is the head over the wife. The women are told to obey their husbands, submit to their husbands. Then you see the order in 1 Corinthians 11 where it references the creation order. There's God and Christ in the office of mediator. So Christ in the office of mediator, that's his incarnation, is subject to God the Father. Then man is subject to Christ and man is subject to Christ and woman is subject to man. Or not subject, but it's a great gradation scale of superiors and inferiors or glory.
So is being in charge, is that a privilege or is it a responsibility?
It's both.
Okay, now I've experienced both. Let me tell you how. I spent 25 years as a project engineer, being in charge of things. Not necessarily people, but I was responsible. So every night, when I was done with the work, I had worries that I took home with me, things I had to deal with, structure that continued. And it was really a burden. And now, you know what? I'm just a truck driver. I could have went for the supervisory job. No, don't want that. I just want to show up in the morning, do my job, tell me what to do, where to go. Okay, I have a lot of discretion. But I don't have the responsibility for anything beyond me. My responsibility is just for doing my job. And you know what? Life is so much easier. So when women think, oh, that's so wonderful being in charge. I can tell people what to do. And I can carry all that burden. I'm telling you, no. It's better to just say, okay, here's my little job. And it's within my capacity. That's all I have to do. And, I can advise my supervisor when, okay, something's goofy here. You need to make a decision, whatever. But I'm not responsible for that. And it is so wonderful. Why don't women want to take that same thing and say, you know what? I'm under my husband. Here's my area of responsibility. And he can deal with all those other things. And I can just exist and do my job and be happy.
So a hierarchy is not a bad thing. Well, patriarchy is not a bad thing. It's a type of hierarchy. It's a true hierarchy. And hierarchy mean there's gradations of people. There's those in charge and those lesser in charge and so on and so forth down the road. There's also hierarchies in skills. There's hierarchy and gifts. There's a hierarchy in the church. There's a hierarchy in the family. It's a hierarchy in government. It's inescapable. If everyone's equal, then there's no one in charge.
But
And
Nick, we have technology now. We don't need anybody to be in charge.
Oh. So you're going to enslave yourself to the person who created and monitors the technology.
Oh, come now. You know they would never do that.
Oh, does anybody remember the 2020 through 2022 and all that was happening, all the stuff
Nick,
on
you
the
just
internet.
don't understand. That was for your benefit, not theirs.
Okay, Plutarch, fine. But if we're all equals and we're all doing our thing, who's going to coordinate our efforts? And is
see,
not the coordinator then de facto in charge?
no, Steve, see, that's the thing you don't understand. The free market solves all of these problems. We just all go off and do our own thing and be the best we can be and do at that our own thing, and everything will magically work out.
You sound like a communist utopia.
You know what? This
Or
sounds like an
Quoting
orchestra.
libertarians.
yeah.
It's like an orchestra. Everybody chooses their own instrument. You know, you don't have first chair, second chair. You don't have assigned parts. You don't actually have to tune your instruments to the same tone. You can just play and it's all going to work out. You don't need anybody up there, you know, keeping everybody on the same beat and, you know, running the show. It's just all going to work out, right?
Well, of course. I mean, I can have an
Okay.
app. I can vote through my phone. I can run my entire life. I can stream, of course, from my phone, and I can make money streaming, right? I mean, obviously, guys, I'm playing devil's advocate here. But there is a fundamental belief, and we've talked about this before. There's a fundamental belief in the modern zeitgeist that technology, human technology, can replace everything, including humans. And so, you know, Nick, we're talking about patriarchy today. Well, technology, we can replace patriarchy with technology. And I'm not just speaking about like electronic technology. Technology in this case actually just refers to human invention. Okay. Humans can devise a system better than whatever it was that came before because we have technology, but because we have psychology, we know how to manipulate the human mind, right?
So we just need to wait for that exoskeleton to be perfected, where a woman can just get in this exoskeleton and her weaker body strength can now be enhanced by the exoskeleton, and she can now be equal in strength or maybe even superior in strength to a man.
There you go, Steve. See, now you're getting it.
Okay.
Oh, all the ways we try to confuse ourselves and escape the natural order.
Yes, that's what I'm actually getting at here. Klaus, one of our viewers, left a fantastic comment, and my response was, it turns out humans are human everywhere, regardless, you know, of where humans behave like humans do. None of this technology that we've invented, psychological, technological, or mechanical or otherwise, has done much of anything to change human behavior. Here's what I would say it has done. It has taken existing human behavior to extremes. So, you know, you guys are talking about the woman who don't need no man. Well, technology has allowed her to think that she can operate without natural order because, hey, technology will save her if something goes wrong.
Or the state.
Hey, no, the state is a form of technology. It is.
Yes.
The state is a very complex human invention.
That's funny because I just saw something about a week ago, and I thought back to one of the whatever podcasts where a woman was actually arguing that, well, we can do anything men can do because tools. We have tools. Great. Do you know how to use them? So where this became evident to me is, on YouTube they do these toolbox videos where they go through a man's toolbox. So this guy was going through an aviation mechanics toolbox. My God. This guy had things to do, things and rivets and offset. And I mean, he had a whole big ass thing. The average mechanic wouldn't have a clue as to what to do with all these tools. But each one of them had its purpose. They weren't used very often, but when you needed to put a rivet in or drill a hole underneath here to come up behind this thing and, put in a rivet, yeah, he could do it because he had the tools. But more important, he had the knowledge to use the tools. Yeah, you give that tool chest to me, I'm not going to have a clue. You give it to a woman, she's not going to have a clue as to how to fix that airplane, put that patch in when the catering truck rammed into the side of the airplane and put a hole in it. Oh, there's got to be a patch here. How are you going to put that patch in? How are you going to do it? I don't know. There's a hierarchy here. And airplane mechanics are superior to me because they know what they're doing. I'm going to say, yep, I'll trust you. Because they have the skills. So do men have skills that women don't?
Can I say something here? All human invention will necessarily contain within it hierarchies. All of it. Because in order to invent something, you must first master that thing. And by fact of becoming the master of that thing, you become the top of the hierarchy.
Superior.
No, yeah.
Oh, guys, we talked about future and present hierarchies. Let's go back to old school hierarchy, the natural order as given by pastors and theologians. That's my thing. Yeah, I brought this topic up. We'll have fun with it. Oh, we can start with Theodore Beza. So he's born 1519, died 1605. Theodore Beza was a renowned teacher of the Academy in Geneva, and he's a successor to John Calvin. He wrote several works, including works on the sacraments and predestination. If we go by the numbers, which should not be the deciding factor, yet cannot be ignored, Beza would be the most influential person upon the Westminster Assembly, for he is referenced in the minutes the most, being that of 29 times. Certainly, his work was influential, as many of his writings had been translated into English in the 16th through 17th centuries. Also, in regards to Beza's influence, his Latin and French writings were available to those who were educated in them. You have to remember, Latin was traditionally taught to the clergy and in the schools, unlike today. So we'll look at some of his views on men and women, husbands and wives. Oh, the Psalms, not usually where you'd think that you can get views on hierarchy or the family or men and women. So in Theodore Beza's work upon the Psalms, he thinks both Psalms 127 and 128 speak upon the grave importance of the oikonomy. That's economia. That's like the household, the family, as the foundation to the good of society, the nation, the preservation of, as he quotes, that happy state. He writes on Psalm 27, "It appeareth that it was written and delivered unto the people, that the people might acknowledge such a benefit of God, by the establishing whereof the whole safety of the nation did stand, not in the stony temple, nor in the outward rites only, but that every one should consecrate himself and his family unto God. Therefore was it used again after the return from captivity, and after all things were restored for just cause, that the people of God might be taught which is the true foundation, both of the government domestical and political. It's an important phrase there. And by what means that happy state might be preserved. And this is the sum thereof, that families and cities do stand by religion and the true worship of God, and that the godly families are the true ornaments of the cities. All right, so we see here in this text that the prime importance of the family unto God. Oh, so they should be united according to the natural order, but also consecrated unto God. The true foundation talks about government domestical. Family government. So, what is the estate in the United States that does not exist, that has been usurped by tyrants and
Family
removed
government?
parents' contrary authority? Oh, yeah. Husbands have no authority in the eyes of the state. Husbands are slaves of the state if a woman leaves them, in many cases.
Well, it's even worse than that. Prior to that, it's her word, her consent for anything. And actually, she can withdraw her consent after the fact, and then he's still guilty in her mind and can be convicted. So it's not just the family, it's prior to family where the woman is what, not de facto, but de jure. Is that the, am I using that right, Nick?
By rule?
What's de jure is by
De
rule,
facto
de
is
facto is in fact. So it's not de jure, it's de facto. Okay.
right. So, look, the godly families are the true ornaments of the cities. So when you remove the natural order, of households of who's doing this, him, him, the masculine sex is doing this. That's the normative case. I know there's widows and stuff, but it's the men that do this to consecrate their family unto God, right? That's the happiest state, and that the godly families are the true ornaments of the cities. You can't have great cities, you can't have great civilization without godly families, without well-ordered families. Yeah, I might say you say, oh, you could have Muslims and stuff, and they're not, Christians. Yeah, at least they have still the natural order, but I think the true natural order is given in the whole Word of God.
Well, okay. The nature of civilization, society, the foundation of society is the family.
Right.
And so, as long as you have that order right, a civilization will happen. It doesn't have to be Christian, it could be Hindu, it could be Muslim. As long as the man is ahead, and that's been true throughout most of the great civilizations in societies, even those non-Christian. It's not based on Christianity, it's based on the family. And yes, the family reflects the order of God in which is explained in Christianity. So you want to go to the fullness of understanding, go to Christianity. But you get the basics right, you can form a civilization.
That's correct. What's interesting here is that they say, oh, all these single mommies, these Reformed 304s, oh, I love Jesus. I order myself after God. Yet what do? Destroy families. And yet they have this Christian ornamentation. They're like, there's a phrase, a biblical phrase. They're like whitewashed tombs.
She's just cutting out the middleman. Instead of going through her husband or father to God, she's just taking the direct route.
Oh, yeah, First Corinthians 11. Let's cut out that. No need for the man. No, Jesus is her boyfriend.
I was just going to say that. well, but it goes back to this idea that we can use technology to replace hierarchies. Same thing. Why do I need to go through a man? I have the same rights to access to God that a man does. I will go on my own because I can. I am equal to a man, right? So off she goes. Jesus is her boyfriend.
So there's a hierarchy, and it's to the good of civilization and the Christian society, especially if you actually follow the word of God, not cutting out the word of God for your own purposes and inverting the hierarchy. The psalm then he talks about Psalm 28. Theodore Beza does. He says this psalm pertaining to the same purpose as to the former, that's 127, even that of the people of God being again restored should understand and have set forth in a certain tables what was their duty in whole economical, that is, for private families. And it doth teach two chief and principal precepts of the right government of the family, to wit, the fear of God openly testifieth, and diligent labor of the body. But this also is to be observed, that all men are here spoken unto as though they were married. He says, because this is the ordinary vocation from which how unlawful it is for a man unadvisedly to depart. So you see in Psalm 127, Psalm 128, Beza highlights the crucial importance of the family, the economy be maintained, that they may be given over to the Lord. He explains that the duties of the household should be done, the right government of the family, laboring those duties. He assumes marriage is to be almost universal, and he warns against departing from the marital estate. All right. Then he talks about manhood and womanhood
Nick,
in Job.
duties. You
First,
mentioned duties in here.
yeah,
I don't. Okay,
not
let me
not
ask
roles.
you a question that women do not consider, don't understand. Which is greater? Which is bigger? The duties of leadership or the privileges of leadership?
Duties.
Are the duties are a burden,
Yes.
and the privileges are a benefit.
Well, the duties are also, you
Therefore,
should rejoice in your duties. You should rejoice in the duties that you've been
okay,
established
yeah,
to
but
do.
I'm just speaking just secular. So your
Okay.
duties, the burden is greater than the benefit. I would agree with that as a man. Yes. Do I complain about it? No. Why? I'm a man. This is what I was made to do. This is my purpose. My purpose is to do my duty, to bear the burden. And the benefits, yeah, there are some benefits. But you know what? It's easier to be a blue collar guy, just taking the orders and doing my job, than to actually have the responsibility of being in charge and making sure everything works. So, yeah, okay, sometimes it's great not to be in charge.
Right. And speaking of duties, I'm going to say in modern evangelical 20th century, 21st century views on men and women, they use the word roles. No, they refer to it historically as duties. You don't just get to play a role, it follows according to nature who you are, according to the natural order, and you have duties that flow from that. Duties according to office, Duties according to station, duties according to your nature as a man or a woman. Okay. And so Job chapter 2 talks about, oh, you foolish woman. His wife wants him to forsake Christ or forsake the Lord and die, basically, or blaspheme the Lord. And it says, Beza says, Satan seemeth for 3 causes to have made choice of this woman. My note, Job's wife, among the rest of Job's friends and servants. One cause is because he had from the beginning tried how easily, no, he had from the beginning tried how easily this sex may be beguiled, and how soon they may be brought to beguile others. The third and last, that she, who under Job bear the greatest rule and authority in that house, notice the hierarchy there, as it were giving the onset, the rest of the Job's servants, which were yet remaining, and likewise his friends, might be the rather encouraged to follow her evil example. Okay. Calvin's successor, that's Beza, shows that the female sex is more liable to deception. Quote, how easily this sex may be beguiled. Also, he shows that Job, as the father and the husband, had the greatest authority and rule of that house. Notably, he not only was such as husband and father, but also as master to servants. The husband and father are naturally the heads of the house over wife and children. This is a household government and order, a hierarchy, which is well praised by Beza. He says, notwithstanding, okay, go ahead.
So I keep seeing all these women out here, and even, we call them trad cons, but these conservative blogger women, podcasters. And when you actually listen to what they say, they all have a different level of hierarchy that they're willing to accept before they say, no, you've gone too far. What I'm hearing is they've all bought into some level of lie. And maybe some of them recognize that there is that there are greater lies out there, and they didn't buy into those, but they've bought into some of the lie, right? Like, for example, the fight over the 19th Amendment and women's right to vote. A lot of trad cons, you say, oh, we need to take that away. They go, whoa, wait a minute. Right? And so what you're telling me here is that even, and this is for you men out there, well, I mean, our audience has probably already gotten here, but all women buy into lies. They might not buy into all the lies, but they are, because what I'm hearing is all women are more liable to deception, but it doesn't say that they're more liable to all deceptions, right? They're still humans. They still have eyes and ears, and some of them are going to go, nah, that's too much for me. But they all have some level of lie that is comfortable to them, that they like.
Let me point it out this way. All these women that you're talking about, some level, some boundary that they're putting on, because they need that boundary. Because without putting that boundary on their husband, who knows what he could do?
Mm-hmm.
If she took all restraint on him, oh my God, do you realize how evil and nasty and whatnot he could be? Okay, I know myself. You remove all restraint from me. The woman removes all restraint from me. Am I going to turn into a tyrant? No, I'm not.
No.
I don't have the energy or the will or the desire to control every aspect of her life. I have a lot of mercy. I don't want to do that. But when she pushes back on me, it usually ends up in a somewhat destructive way. And I'm not going to be the tyrant anyway. So why are you pushing back on me? You're just creating strife where you just be obedient. And take that for what it's worth. Yes, I will hurt you to prevent you from harm. I will tell you you're wrong. That hurts your feelings. Therefore, I hurt you. I will tell you, don't do that, because if you do that, it's going to harm the family. It's going to harm the finances. It's going to create problems in the future that you don't understand. That's leadership. Being willing to hurt others in the present to prevent harm in the future.
Right. So was what do you, it's interesting that even among some of the patriarchal circles, they want to deny that the women is more liable to deception. It's interesting when you deny nature. Where has this pattern of women been exposed? In what environment have they shown women lie to themselves and are easily lied, buying the lie of social pressure and other things?
My goodness, the list is long. What would you like? Let's see. We've got government. We've got pretty much all of the conservative, the tradcon edifice. All of the egalitarian churches, obviously. Like, which would you like to pick on today?
Well, what I'm saying is they've all abandoned this idea of the female sex being easily beguiled or led to deception or deceived. Where has it shown back up when the church ignored it? Who has revealed this truth to men?
Oh,
What community?
the red BS, the red pill.
Yeah, imagine that. That Steve's favorite saying is, "You ignore nature, right? Nature tends to show up somewhere else, right?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the truth cannot be suppressed. It's going to show up someplace else. Therefore, if Christians throw out this dynamic, it's going to show up elsewhere, like the red pill. The dynamic of male headship, leadership, being in charge, where else is that going to show up? Oh, yeah, like the kink community, like BDSM. And women actually desire that. They can't find it in their normal life. So, we'll go look for it over there.
I want to say something here because I don't think it gets said enough. There is extreme risk and instability in suppressing the truth, because the moment you suppress the truth, anytime the truth crops up in your own circle or your own environment, you are forced to suppress it. So two things happen there. First, there's a personal risk to you, right? And that risk is the consequences of ignoring reality, whatever those consequences will be. We've talked about that. The instability is you are now giving up the authority to speak on that truth. So, for example, the truth of female behavior is now being exposed by a bunch of secularists in the red pill. The church has lost the authority to speak to these truths. And so now secularists have to come in with their secular ideas of what's going on and provide answers that the church is unwilling or unable to provide on its own because the church suppressed the truth.
I want to go a little bit further because I mentioned the BDSM community. this hierarchy, this dominance. Okay, it left the church. Now it goes over here in this other community. Guess what they don't have? Christian principles and restraints and checks and balances. Okay, the truth had to go there because it had to go somewhere. Now it went there and it's kind of unbounded, which means it's probably going to go too far. But hey, this is the way things work.
The truth is more important than your man-made technological edifice. And the church, by the way, is a technology. The church, and I'm talking about, Big C church, not, Christianity, but the church is a technological edifice. And as such, when that technological edifice comes to odds with the Christian faith, the Christian truths, then it is the technological edifice that will get swept away. The truths that of this world, the truths that God built into the universe around us, they're not going away. They'll come out elsewhere. But your church is under no such protection. There will be a church, but it doesn't have to be your church.
Christ will be the shepherd still.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And Basic continues saying, "Okay, what do you got to say, Steve?"
The church is not written on our hearts. Our nature is written on our hearts.
Yeah.
The church is in a hierarchy to guide our nature. If it doesn't resonate with our nature is going to go elsewhere. And then the church has no controls and governance and guidance over it. That's not a good situation, but that's where we find ourselves.
So Andrew left a good comment down here. After the secularists reassert the truth, the church then labels the natural truth against Christianity. Yes, and this is part of the church losing its moral authority and losing its place in society as a cultural guardrail. The church, particularly the TradCon variants of it, has no particular relevance today because of this dynamic. The secularists have a better hold of the truth than the Christians do. And when the secularists put it out there, everyone goes, oh yeah, we can see that's true. And the church becomes irrelevant. It's not against Christianity. It's just against the things that they wish you to think Christianity is.
It's against the wishy-washy pastors, the shepherds that get fat off the flock and don't actually feed the flock, but actually aid them in the destruction of society and family.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
We're seeing, the church should be a monolith, but it's not. When we talk about the church, there's different views. What is the church? As a Catholic, well, I believe the church is a hierarchy under the Pope. Nick and Plutarch don't believe that. Okay, fine. We have a lot of commonality here, but neither are any of us evangelicals. And you can see that the evangelical message of, it's dispensationalism, the rapture, throw in Zionism. That's kind of a boomer thing. I'm seeing signs that the younger generation is not really buying into that. So you're seeing that.
That's a boomer theology.
And you're actually seeing, okay, you pick any denomination, all of them. Are they preaching patriarchy and the headship of man? No. No, they're not. It's nowhere to be found. Well, I mean,
Or
you find
if they preach patriarchy, they don't
so
preach it in action. They affirm the hierarchy, but they deny it in action.
right. So it's just not resonating with people. Are you seeing a big return to the church for the solid teaching? Not really. You're seeing some emotionalism, people wanting this to be true, and emotionally coming back. In most cases, an emotional conversion doesn't last. In 50%. I don't know.
Well,
There are a lot of emotional conversions that do last, but
so
I don't understand them.
there was somebody posted an article on Twitter, and they were talking about, oh, the Catholic Church is seeing this big up, and I mean, like Steve's Catholic Church, they're seeing this big uptick in Gen Z conversions, and I had to point out that you actually see this every 15 to 20 years. There's this
Echo.
monotonic thing where you have an entire generation that's basically been unchurched and has never, and they're looking for something. That's the emotional conversion that Steve is talking about. These people,
What are they returning to? Substance or good feelings? Because I can tell you, they're not telling you this is the way it is. This is the order. This is how you have to do it. I mean, there are some out there. Okay, you can go to the Latin Mass and you're going to get some more of that and more of the traditional parishes.
these Gen Zers aren't converting to Latin Mass.
No, it's pretty much patriarchy light at best.
It's even in the Catholic Church, when they preach patriarchy, they preach it like the Protestants do. All of the responsibility, none of the authority.
Rollo says that's slavery, and he's right.
Yes, but and here's the thing. I know the Orthodox Church, very popular right now. Guess what they preach in the United States? And people will say, but my Orthodox pastor doesn't, to which I have to say, congratulations. The Orthodox Church in general preaches responsibility without authority. There is nowhere you can go.
Right. Nowhere you can go. But I'm going to return to this now. We're talking about patriarchy. And I said how even some will just say it, they'll affirm the hierarchy but deny patriarchy in practice. And I also want to make you think of some red pill phrases and truth as I read this and see what you come up with when I get through it. For Beza writes, notwithstanding to me, it seemeth nothing probable that this matron having the government of so godly and well-ordered a family could so easily be brought to use such a shameless speech to her husband. The godly and well-ordered family is praised by Betty, and yet Job's wife is at fault for such shameless speech. The authority and rule, the dignity due to him by being the head of the house was not upheld, but torn down. His response to such an injury is commendable. He says, having so great an injury offered him by his wife, nevertheless, he was not wrathful against her, nor showed any great token of anger. Yea, he did so moderate and qualify this his answer, that in reproving her, he neither forgot that authority, which as a husband he has over his wife, neither yet did quite lay aside all regard of women's infirmity, which good and godly moderation of husbands would keep towards their wives, parents toward their children, masters toward their servants. We should have all things both in private families and in whole commonwealths, better and more quietly ordered than they now are. So Mr. Beza praises the godly actions of Job to his inferior wife in the natural household relation. Man is to regard wife's infirmity, but this infirmity is not defined here. Of course, we've already talked about that, liable to deception. He has a rightful authority. The proper order of relations are listed from superior to inferior by basic. Husbands to wives, parents to children, masters to servants. A hierarchy, which are better for the private families and whole commonwealths. You can see this reflected in the Westminster Larger Catechism. So what happened here? This is patriarchy in action.
Well,
Let's observe.
okay.
Go ahead, Steve.
There's kind of that old adage, don't pay attention to what she says. Pay attention to what she does. There's a lot of talk in here about her words. And then her actions. Yeah, you know what? Focus on her actions, because that shows her the state of her mind and her respect for the husband. That's where it's revealed. And the other thing is, they're talking about, a man, okay, he needs to behave such and such. Frame control.
There you go.
Does a man with frame control ever go ballistic and
That's what we call the drunk
be a
captain. Right?
tyrant and, just abuse his wife? If he's doing that, does he have frame control?
Nope.
No.
So, the red pill guys, what do they emphasize? A man needs to control his frame. It's really the only thing he can control. He can't control his woman. He can control himself, and she will respond. And don't focus on what she says and get all uptight about that, because you lose frame. Just kind of ignore that. Watch what she does. Consider that. Maintain your frame. Don't go off half-cocked. It sounds very Christian to me.
It is. They would say that it's not, but their argument is that, well, it's observably true. Well, okay, but the truth is the truth. You don't get to pick and choose your truths. And that's what the church is trying to do. We can sit here and argue the various theologies. I'm not sure that's the interesting thing here. It's to me, the problem is that the church had a connection to the truth, but it no longer does. And so the truth has to come out somewhere else now. And by the way, church, you might not like what those people choose to do with that truth. Because if I teach a man about women, about how to work with, I guess, but or how to manipulate women, and there are no moral guardrails placed on it by some institution, say the church, then he's going to go off and he's going to use those tools in whatever manner his own personal morality sees fit. Because the church, in suppressing these truths, made it so that the church itself could not even acknowledge that this is the truth. Therefore, everyone's going to go to the church, and when it tries to speak on it, they're going to go, but you don't even acknowledge that this is true. What do you know about it? And they don't know anything about it.
That's not a dangerous thing. Teaching men how to manipulate women is not really all that dangerous.
It's not. The church thinks it is.
Because most men don't want to do that. You remember you've heard about 15 years ago, there was this big movement of pickup artists. and there were boot camps. You come here, we're going to teach you, men who are hapless with women, we're going to teach you to go out and talk to women. And can become a Chad and a pickup artist. Yeah, okay. I actually went to one of those because I wanted to improve my skills. I'm sure a lot of men did. Was it my goal to go out and bet a lot of women? No. In fact, I didn't do it. I gained a lot of skill, but I didn't take it to that end. And you know what? Most of the men didn't take it to that end. So you can teach men all you want. They kind of have some self-control, and it didn't unleash a monster. It really didn't. It was funny, but everybody was so worried about this movement.
Well, and game's just a response to the failures of chivalry, the so-called romantic ideal, proto-feminism in a sense, and feminism, where patriarchy has gone away with, where parents used to say, hey, this is a good young woman, and the families would get together, there'd be a dowry, a bride price, or something like that, and the families set them up, the families kept them together, and you better treat them right, and the ladies had generally a little bit more respect culturally towards their husbands, and they
Okay,
couldn't
is
leave
game
and take their children.
is game manipulation of women, or is
No, it's
skillful
understanding.
social interaction with women?
There you go.
Okay,
Skillful
Bingo.
so
social
if you
interaction
view
with
it as
women is
manipulation,
understanding women.
teach men how to manipulate, or teach men how to increase their skill at socially interacting with women, then isn't it a good thing? Now,
Okay, it's like
certainly, I will agree that some men are going to use this for evil purposes,
Of course.
but not most
Oh
men.
well.
like salesmen, like car salesmen. I used to be a car salesman, right? I learned the skills of how to, better present something, better negotiate, approach people, and I could read how their body language and different ways to initiate conversation. A lot of them actually wanted a good salesman there, but they didn't want to feel crushed. They didn't want to feel threatened, but they were interested in the vehicle, and they did want an experienced salesman to show them the vehicle, show them their options, and hopefully buy a vehicle. If he What happens if you have an unskilled salesman is he loses a sale, they might buy from a different brand or a different dealership.
Oh, you mean so? Did you just
So
call the
with men,
church
right,
bad
men,
salesmen?
yeah, yeah.
So what you're saying is that these, okay, we call them manipulations, and they are to some extent manipulations in a technical sense of the word. But that does not make them inherently bad, right? Because look,
These women are looking for a man.
yeah,
They're looking for a man.
and your skill at these, at game, is actually a tool that they use to measure your value as a man.
If you're boring, you're boring.
Yeah.
If you come in and you spike their emotions, positive, negative, laughter, teasing, a little bit of shame, whatever it is. You know what? Women like the variation, and it's like playing a song. You learn how to do that and give her some stimulation, because now you're not boring. You're interesting. You're mysterious. It works. So, do you not want to do that for your woman? Create an environment where she's being stimulated in the way she wants to be stimulated, but yet she trusts you to guide her. And yeah, she can feel all these things under your canopy. I think that's a good thing. Because if she's not allowed to feel those things under your leadership, and she greatly desires to feel these things, I think she's going to want to go feel them elsewhere.
Yeah, on a site that starts with O and ends with fans. Like, that's where they go for this stuff. Well, some of them do. Far too many of them. But they go other places. They go to bars and pick up dudes. There was another thing on Twitter about Charlize Theron was celebrating the fact that she's 40 something, and she doinked a dude who was 26, and this was just this huge thing, and that's what these women do.
Let's get back to Beza. I'm trying to let's get through this. we have so much we can say on anything, pretty much at this point. Okay. If any man, it says this is on Book of Christian Questions and Answers, G Points Christian Religion. If this is Beza, it says, if any man deny Jesus Christ to be the owner and master of us, accursed be he. Therefore, when I say he is ours, I know that's Jesus Christ. I know is that there's usually like two dots above it in the English, Old English, or Middle English. So that is to it which believe. I mean, not that there is given unto us any superiority over him, but I say that he is given and born unto us for our sakes. For example, a man takes his wife, which must obey him and be serviceable to him. And yet on the other side, the wife may say, like, as I am this man's wife, and my Father hath given me unto him to have authority over me. So on the other side, he is my husband, and hath given himself to me to enjoy him. Verily, to the end he may love me and cherish me as his wife. So Christ is given to us, but we don't have any superiority over Christ. We're given to Christ, and we don't have superiority over Christ. And yet, a man takes his wife. What does he say? That she must obey him, be serviceable to him. And notice the hierarchy. The Father gives me to him to have authority over me. Oh, there's a transfer of authority here. The Father gives the woman away to the husband. There's a transfer of authority. So when they say, "You're not my father," has anybody heard that? I heard that when I was married and insisted on something small. "You're talking to me like a child. You're not my father."
No, I never heard that one.
Oh, I
They
did.
were just
Oh, it's so annoying.
They were just outright defiant.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
more in Steve's boat. It was literally just, you can't tell me what to do. It's like, well, okay,
yeah.
then I guess I can't. I mean, what else are you gonna say to somebody who says that, right? I mean, what does
There's
the
the
red pill
door.
say? Yeah, exactly. What does the red pill say? There's the door, right? That's the only thing you can do with a woman like that.
I don't like that answer. For many years, I resisted that answer. But I've come to the conclusion that that is really the only remedy that men have. And if you play that card, usually it just scares the shit out of her and she comes around. But you have to threaten to play the card and let her know you have the card early on.
Now, there's a
And
proper
I think
order.
Plutarch's going to comment on this one.
Well, I was just going to say you can't play it very often because eventually she's just going to say, "Fine, do it."
Right. Well, look,
But
there's
you
a
let her
proper
know you have the
order.
card, and then you show her mercy. And it seems to work.
A few times, and then they figure out that and then they figure out, I'm air quoting that, they decide that you're not going to play it, so they just say, "Okay, do it." And then if you're going to make a threat, you have to be willing to follow through with it at any time.
Now, there is a proper order, not just unadvisedly depart. Now, look, this happened in an orderly Christian society where the Westminster Confession of Faith was written. Yeah, you're supposed to try to have it remedied by the church and the civil magistrate, either or. Well, the civil magistrate ain't going to do crap for you, and the church is just going to say, oh, they're never going to discipline this woman in most cases. So you're stuck with a heretical, disobedient wife.
Okay,
So
but
at
Nick,
this time,
um,
go ahead.
it goes back to the irrelevance of the church. The church has made itself irrelevant. Okay, the church could be a place where these issues get worked out, but they've chosen not to be in order to recognize this this heresy of egalitarianism. Okay, so and of course the magistrates, they're not going to either. So we are left with the only option to deal with this being a secular option because the church opted itself out of being an option.
And let me also say, this time, the time this was written, the church was predominantly in authority. And divorces were uncommon. So it was telling men, don't use this, don't do this, it's immoral to do this. Meanwhile, in our modern society, they've given women all these extra power to dissolve the marriage and destroy the man and take the children. So this is the only card that the men have. So your admonition by the church not to use this card is kind of foolish because it's your only card. And so you have to make it known that you have this card. You don't want to threaten to play it too soon or too often, but it has to be known, and you have to actually be willing to play the card because the deck is stacked against you.
Right. Yeah. Chief of Sinners has this one. It says this: women equals all authority, no responsibility. That's the deck of cards you have to deal with. So the only thing you have is say, look, if you're not going to follow my authority and you just want to give me all the responsibility, you're basically saying that you're not my wife. And by this point, you're at a point of contempt, probably. So she will, submit somewhere to some man, probably. She won't put out. So she's basically abandoned you and the marriage. And what does the Bible say? It's better to dwell on the rooftop than a house with a contentious woman, or better to be in the desert.
But
Yeah.
Nick, abandonment is only physical abandonment when she physically leaves. If she's still there, that's not abandonment. Come on, Nick. Come.
Oh, she probably will eventually.
Well, my point here is that this is one of those technocratic distinctions that we have created. If a
Mhm.
woman has abandoned her submission to the hierarchy, she has abandoned the marriage, and now she is just a roommate. Because it's not really a marriage at that point, is it? Right?
No.
Right. Okay. So you
In
can
name
abandon.
only.
Yeah, exactly. You can abandon a marriage before you physically leave it. But the
Correct.
church wants to make it all about the physical. Well, you've still got to be a man because, she's still your wife. Is she though? Is she really?
Right. Is this any different than percentages throughout history? There's no statistics on this, but I would believe that throughout history, the percentages of good marriages are probably not that much different than they are today. Why did most marriages not fail? because of outside restrictions on divorce. That doesn't mean it was a happy marriage. Doesn't mean they were doing it right. It just means they didn't get divorced, which, okay, it's a good thing.
And it wasn't all about romanticism or the romantic ideal.
Exactly. But to really have a good marriage, the man, okay, you're not going to do it by showing your wife or future wife this document and convincing her intellectually. She doesn't exist in that realm. She doesn't think in that realm. She doesn't care. It's about emotions. You're going to have to identify with her emotions and lead her and understand her, understand game, understand how she operates. And, that's kind of what we're going through on Alina's channel. Women desire restraint, believe it or not. They do want to be desired. They do want to be loved. So it's like physical restraint. Yeah, in from a benevolent man. Yeah. Desire. Yeah. Tell her she's sexy, that you have the hots for her, that you can't control yourself and you just have to penetrate her. And give her a hug. Let her know, I love you just because you are you. So they need all three of those things. And the freedom to express their emotions. So it does take a lot of skill. A man can develop these skills to manage a woman, not just to order her around. You actually have to manage her and understand her. And you can do it.
All right. Yes, you should check out our episode we did on Elena Barr's fitness on last Saturday. I think we covered that topic, so you should check that out there on our channel. Continuing on, he talks about women in the civil magistracy. This is in a document, Latin document, translated years ago. Confessio Christianae fide et iusdem collatio cum papisticus heresibus. Here, Beza does not advocate rebelling against women magistrates, but Beza does affirm the creational subordination of the feminine sex to men in general. Also, he thinks it would have been wiser to have found a way that the scepter rule would not have been ever given to women, because there's Elizabeth and there's Queen Mary and all that. Indeed, he thinks that the rule of women magistrates, is appointed to us by God to chastise the cowardice of men, being not a blessing of God upon their kingdoms. He also tells that women were not created to be the slave servants of men, while they are indeed subject to their husbands in marriage according to creation, and by the cursed fall, man was to rule over his wife. Nonetheless, he warns of being careful not to submit every woman to every man, as if meaning not to be that. Means you shouldn't submit every woman to every man. Like, for instance, a male child should not rule over his mother. Upon this point, he shows that the law is not so universal of women's subjection that it admits no exception. So even mothers and other women, according to God's providence, are rendered august and venerable even to men. So there's his doctrine of civil magistrates. People say, "Oh, this is something that all the reformers in the church were all for women rulers." No, they weren't. It's contrary to nature. It's contrary to the creational subordination of the feminine sex. It's contrary to tradition. It's contrary to scripture. Yet women are not slaves and servants of men. Yet they are subject to their husbands. And this subjection, of course, is creational and reaffirmed by the curse and fall. And there's going down. He has this other thing that talks about he talks more charitably to the reign of at least one woman, particularly Queen Elizabeth I. He says, certainly, if we wish to compare that blessed tranquility which they have been enjoying for many years and under the kindest and most peaceful reign of her most serene majesty Elizabeth, with the wretched and unhappy condition of so many other parts, we shall learn from experience as such how beneficial and blessed that moderation of royal power is, if only it be rightly employed, and if the very kings, God-fearing men, and lovers of the people allowed themselves not to be swayed by it as if they were wards in need of guardians, as flatterers at court who stuff themselves with bread kneaded with the tears that the wretched commons are wont to say, but to be directed and advised by it, yet with that respect and obedience which befits their majesty and is due to it. So he's not for rebelling, but he's using, he's saying, yeah, they are in power and it is what it is. He's not saying it is what it ought to be, but hey, there you go. And you can have some blessing even under a female ruler, even though in general it is a condemnation of the cowardly and effeminate nature of men. Oh, sexual differentiation, androgyny condemned. Says, and therefore, as every man is not one flesh with every woman, nor every woman with every man, but sides the human nature, which is in a general common to them both. So there's one human nature, right? Yet it's differentiated. There's not two human natures like the Socinians taught, or some of the Talmudic people teach. There's one human nature, and it's differentiated into, there's a difference of sexes, yet one human nature, one human species.
So
Actually, that's a better way to say it. One human species differentiated into two sexes. Then he
so
says,
does this mean
this is
I
what he
can't
said.
command multiple women? Now I can only command one woman, and she has to be my wife. In other words, I don't have authority over women in general. As a man,
No,
I have
no, you
authority
have
over
authority over your
one
daughters.
woman.
No, and your
Well,
daughters.
okay, and my daughters, my
So,
children,
right.
but primarily it's a wife. So, encountering a woman on the street, she doesn't have to listen to me. I have no authority over her.
Nope. Where's her
No,
husband?
and
Where's where's her father?
I shouldn't try to assert any authority. And yes, if she be a magistrate or a judge over me, I still have no authority over her. She shouldn't be there,
But she is,
but I can't do anything about it.
right?
On my place.
Right. Correct. You still have to have respect for the office, even though there be terrible people in the office or somebody unfit according to their sex, as I think John Knox would say. Now he talks about cross-dressing and bad garments on Deuteronomy. He talks about, I think it's Deuteronomy 22:5. I think he gets this from. Yeah. Nope. He didn't get that from that. Okay. From another work. If there be any villainous and outrageous fashion in all of France, this filth must be brought hither by and by to poison and infect this place, as those monstrous roughs, those great villainous long bellies, these more than villainous fashions of women's gowns, the only name whereof showeth in what detestation they ought to be had of all honest women. And what shall I say of these vile and stinking androgynes? That is to say, these men women with their curled locks, their crisp and frizzled hair, fee, fee, and fee again upon these stinking and filthy fashions, which favor of nothing less than of true Christianity. It may please the Lord our God to take an order for it. Seeing men, I should have corrected that. That's the F in the old Roman script. The S's sometimes look like F's at the beginning of words. So, anyways, it may please the Lord our God to take an order for it. Seeing men make no account or reckoning of it, and truly I am certainly assured he will. nature is out of order and people are dressing it up or dressing down.
He was talking about the French here, wasn't he?
Uh-huh. Well, you have to understand. I think he I know Calvin was from France. But this is a French Geneva, so he's French speaking. So I mean, you have to. I don't know if Bayes was from
Yeah.
France or not. I can't remember, but
Prior to the French Revolution, things got a little bit extravagant. Okay, this is probably written prior to that. But yeah,
oh yeah, this is
a French aristocracy had a fashion that was quite, probably quite extreme, both in men and women.
it got so extreme that they're vile and stinking androgynes. And he calls them these men women. You weren't sure if it was a man. You weren't sure if it was a woman.
What is fee and fee again? What does that mean?
Don't know. Don't know. Fee, French. Disgust. Uh, it's not a common phrase. It's like often used to feign shock or mock dismay, disapproval, disgust. So it's
So it's like ick.
yeah, triple ick for emphasis. Just imagine if he was living in our day.
Well, in our day, there'd be people. This guy, there'd be he would be. Oh, I don't know that I can say that on YouTube. He'd be canceled as violently as possible.
If he thought it was bad in that day, it's much worse in our day. Oh man. Okay. There you go. So we'll go on to the next one. Philip Melanchthon. So Philip Melanchthon came to Wittenberg early in the Reformation. He was a professor of Greek. He's regarded as the one who provided systematization of Lutheran theology and the Augsburg Confession and Locae Communes. It's like commonplaces, like systematic theology. The mantle of Lutherans largely fell to Melanchthon after the death of Martin Luther. Melanchthon was cited 3 times in Westminster Assembly. So I don't speak German. I don't translate German. I know some Latin and I can translate Latin. At least I could back then. I haven't done it in a while. So he has an annotations upon First Corinthians. He says, the woman is the servant, therefore her head should be covered. The man should not have his head covered since he is free. I don't think he meant that as in like an actual servant, but that she's subservient. That'd be my guess is when I translated it. But there's the order in 1 Corinthians 11. He is free. He's a free man, right? He's free. So he's the husband. Well, the man is free and the woman is under the man. So the women are not. There's no 19th Amendment, right? Okay. The woman is under a rule of her husband, while the husband is free of such rule, though still subject in church and commonwealth. Also, Melanchthon seems to take the position that the rule of man over woman was founded not upon creation, but upon the fall, as he places the rule of man as being head over the woman, being imposed upon the woman in Genesis 3. So this is something that Luther also, the earlier view, he kind of modified and muddled his view, but this is actually a minority view during the Reformation. I think I counted one man on the Westminster Assembly that held this view, and I think Ocleum Pandius also holds this view, but he contradicts himself in another spot. So it's kind of a modified creational superiority, but more fully established upon the fall of Heraclius and Pandius. But here, so the majority position is, the hierarchy of patriarchy, of man rule, husband rule, is creational and reestablished and reaffirmed at the fall. But here he says he places it really upon the fall in Genesis 3 being imposed. He writes the ugliness of woman is more conspicuous. Oh, I like this one. I remember this. He writes that the ugliness of woman is more conspicuous in the talkative woman who mixes herself in matters of government, rule, and he does this in speaking upon First Timothy. So Melanchthon does this when he speaks on First Timothy chapter 2. Also, in that same book and chapter, the women are to be taken up in the affairs of the household and to leave or omit the trades and affairs which are to be governed by men. But upon the Proverbs 31, he commends the wife that takes the governance of the home, constant attendance to the home, domesticos, and bringing up offspring. You meaning that he knew women were more talkative? It's ugliness when women keep running their mouth and gets into other matters that don't pertain to her.
What I find interesting about this is just very simply that people think that women now are some sort of unique in terms of historical outcomes. No, not particularly. Women have, the only thing that's different between now and then is women have never had so few restraints placed on them today as they have in the past. Their nature hasn't changed, just the restraints we put on them. That's it. That's all. Women have always been talkative. They have always mixed themselves up emotionally in matters where they don't need emotion. This has been true since women have been women. This is female nature. This is how they are and how they were and how they will always be.
There's a spectrum, right? It's okay that women are talkative, but there can be talkative too much. Female nature was never meant to be standed by themselves. They were always under a head, under the authority of a man. If they were not under the authority of a man, they're either a widow, nothing they can do about that, or they're a woman for the streets.
So, okay, you've brought up early Protestant leaders.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing new here.
There's not.
Okay. Oh, you think, this is a Protestant revelation, and no,
Nope.
it's Catholic.
Aquinas, Chrysostom, even Aristotle talked.
Were generally born Catholic. They became Protestant. There was no disagreement on this kind of thing between the Protestants and the Catholics. The teaching was the same. Yes, it's essential. So you would expect the Protestants to talk about it. And in general, they said the same thing that the Catholics said.
Oh, Steve. So what you're saying is that the reason we get along is, Nick and I might be Protestant, you might be Catholic, but we actually agree on most things. There's just a few things where, maybe we differ.
Sure. Yeah.
Wow, guys. See, men who find common ground can get together and work together.
Unless you do a purity spiral.
Yeah, well, true.
I've given up on
that. Some things you can't fix. And you have to realize that. All right. Moving on to Martin Bucer. So Martin Bucer of Strasbourg was an ecumenically minded reformer of a rather conciliatory spirit. Of course, he's opposed to Roman Catholicism. He was a reformer. He tried to mend the differences between the Swiss Reformed under Zwingli and those under Luther, especially upon the Lord's Supper. John Calvin found a home even in Strasbourg for a time before being called back to Geneva. So also Martin Booth just cited 8 times in the minutes of the Westminster Assembly. So he had an effect. Now, it's interesting, during the time of the Westminster Assembly, this was published in English and reprinted in London. His views on man and womanhood, and he talks about, he has this work, The Judgment of Martin Luther Butzer Concerning Divorce. So he talks about the importance and structure of marriage and family. For if holy wedlock, the fountain and seminary of good subjects, be not vigilantly preserved from all blots and disturbances, what can be hoped, as I said before, of a springing up of good men and a right reformation of the commonwealth? This is a phrase that you'll hear repeated or rephrased in different ways, even up probably till present time. Family, which especially the marriage, is the foundation of the family, right? If it's not preserved from blots and disturbances, society is screwed. The commonwealth cannot be rightly reformed. There's no hope. If you don't fix the family, if you don't fix marriage, there's no hope for civilization.
Yeah, wait.
Man, what
Nick,
an original idea.
Nick, you're telling me that just telling men and women to have more babies won't solve the problem?
No, I mean, it's not a wrong thing to have babies and want to get married. That's a natural thing to do. You should,
Sure.
that's a natural desire.
But my point here is you will not fix all you're going to do is perpetuate. At this point, all you're going to do is perpetuate the same brokenness. And how does that help? Because you haven't fixed the actual.
We're on the flip side of this statement.
Right, exactly.
It's failed.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're building the house. Does it matter whether it's built on a firm foundation or on sand?
Well, the engineer in me has an answer, but I'm listening to all the tradcons out there, bleating about the population collapse and saying, you just need to have kids for the sake of having kids because the line needs to go up. And I'm sitting over here going, no.
Aren't they building a house on sand? Doesn't the Bible have something to say about the foolish man who built his house on sand?
Yeah, it has pretty uncharitable things to say about that, man.
It's destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. So look, again, I'm not against having kids. I'm not. My point is that you cannot solve you cannot solve the problem that is causing men to not deal with women at all, much less get relationships and have kids, until you fix the thing that's causing them to not want to deal with women. They're not going to go out and have more babies because Sky Daddy told them to. They're not. Okay? It doesn't matter. Like the admonitions don't matter because the state of how do I put this? The state of the Christian worldview is so broken that you have no moral authority to tell them to do so. Okay? Like, yes, it's God would prefer the situation be that we were out there doing as we are commanded to, being fruitful and multiplying. Yes. But we have so corrupted the secular and Christian theological whatever the moral systems that what it's like, okay, why are we surprised that men aren't signing up for this? Why do we act surprised?
It was not vigilantly preserved from all blots and disturbances. It was overthrown.
Exactly. Like, why are we surprised that men are saying no? Because what the church is pushing is not Christian. It is not moral. So you don't have the right to tell men to go out and throw themselves into the consuming fires of our divorce system and our child support system just so that you personally can feel good about making a fucking line on a fucking chart go up.
You've actually
So-
treated people as numbers.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, that.
So to fix this, and I'll tell you, it's going to take a long time. First, you have to change the laws. Then you need a whole education effort, call it propaganda, to teach the men, encourage the men to practice dominion over the women and assert authority over their wives and children. To be basically good husbands and fathers to raise the next generation. Then the next generation will be raised with a strong father, and progressively more and more. You have to change it now, but changing the laws is not going to solve the problem.
Oh, Steve, it's worse than that.
It's going to take 50 to 100 years to actually make much of a difference.
50 years is wildly optimistic, and here's why. There is no Gen Zer born today who is going to believe you once you change the laws, because their behaviors were set when they were children. Okay? A Gen Zer whose parents went through a vicious divorce and the child was used as leverage and fought over and basically lived a shitty life. It does not matter how many laws you change. That man will not deal with women, period, end of discussion, because his experience says, I don't care what the law says, women are evil creatures, and so they won't deal with them. So you have to get an entire new you have to change the laws. Then an entire new generation has to be born. Well, that's 20 years. So it's going to take 20 years to change the laws, 20 years to build an entire new generation, and then they have to have kids.
Right. I agree with you. It's just a matter of your expression of the timing. But you got to change the laws first. And then you're not going to see any benefit for 20 years.
40 years. 40 years.
40 years.
Because
it's like, change it now. It's a long ass time before you see any benefit. And before those people reach the workforce, holy shit, before they're productive. Okay, to turn this population thing around, change the laws now, you will see the workforce benefit in 70 to 80 years from now.
Correct.
Where that's sorry.
So Steve,
reality.
The demographers actually know this. There's an enormous amount of historical data. If you undergo a population collapse, the minimum recovery time seen throughout history is 100 years.
Hey, you know what? I'm not a demographer. I'm an engineer. I understand a little bit about humans' behavior. And I reached that conclusion.
So it turns out a lot of this is just math.
You have to be a demographer to study this and say, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. No, you know a few facts about math and progressions in human behavior. It doesn't. It's not. It's not that profound. to say this. It's just obvious if you know what you're talking about and can process through information.
And Chief, I saw your comment there. Yeah, sure, you betcha. That's all I have to say to that. The Christ Pill Bros, they're just as out to lunch as the Tradcons, and there's really no other way to look at it.
Those boots are also affirm subjection of women, the hierarchy. In his commentary on Ephesians, he affirms the subjection of woman to man, quoting the hierarchy, 1 Corinthians 11, as according to creation, but also after the fall, as confirmed by Holy Scripture. Oh, marital duties. So yeah, wife should honor and obey her husband, as a church honor obeys her head. The wife has the duty as being subject to her husband, as he is her head. Her subjection includes rendering honor and obedience to the husband. However, the husband has his own duty as head over the wife. The husband must love and cherish his wife as Christ's church. The husband, although the head, it's a title for superiority, guys, has his own duty, which he owes to his wife. She is married and subjected to him, thus inferior. His duty towards his wife is namely that of loving and cherishing her, given the example of Christ loving and cherishing the church. They also have common duties, though, which they owe one another. And he writes, and hence it is concluded that matrimony requires continual habitation and living together, unless the calling of God be otherwise evident. God requires of them both so to live together and to be united, not only in body, but yeah, that means body, but also in mind also, with such an affection as none may be dearer and more ardent among all the relations of mankind, no more efficacy to the mutual offices of love and loyalty. She must follow your frame. But also, if you ain't effing, you ain't united. You're not really living together. Continual habitation and living together, and that requires the mutual duties of being united in body and mind. Okay.
Now, this doesn't mean you
Usually-
have to go at it like rabbits every day. I get a little annoyed with some Catholics on that one. Some, not all, some. Because there are times and places for not, right?
Right, but as a Catholic, I want to say there's no problem going at it like rabbits once in a while.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that either. I'm just, what I'm saying is that, what was it? What was it there? Was it John, I think, who said, you separate for an agreed upon time,
No, that's Paul, 1 Corinthians 7.
Yeah. So it can be useful. Like if somebody got injured, well, guess what you're not doing, right? But that there's an agreed upon time, you need to heal, you need to recover. Okay. Right. These aren't rules without limits on them.
Hey, men have no problem with that these days because they often don't get the physical aspect when their wife is not in the mood. They're used to that. So okay, under this patriarchy, you still don't get it all the time. Oh, woe is me.
I know, right? Well, I think most of these guys, see, that's the thing. Most of these guys would be happy if she just gave him a little bit more. I'm not saying that's good or right, but this idea that she can unilaterally opt out because she doesn't feel like it is taking this too far, right? Like, okay, somebody got injured. Yeah, okay, you're not going to be doing it because that would like aggravate the injury, and that's bad, or okay, don't. But this also, but here's the thing: it goes back to hurt versus harm. The woman doesn't want to. It's not that she's in pain. Well, okay, I know, guys. The headache. You guys have all heard the headache. Okay, I'm in pain. Well, science shows that sex is good for headaches, so knock it off.
It's not that kind of headache.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hey, have you heard
Oh,
that one too?
I'm still healing 6 months to 12 months later. Yeah, I lived that too.
Oh, yeah, I think I
Oh,
know
how
what
about
you're
this
referring to
one?
there.
Oh, I have a tipped uterus. I can't do that position.
What? Huh? Uh, yeah, well, okay. Says the woman who will
Any
happily fold herself into a pretzel for Chad.
Somebody else,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
What? Okay, that maybe seems like out of the blue, but women will come up with any excuse they can. Okay, well, can we switch positions here? No. Remember, I have a tip. I can't do that. Hurts. So it's starfish sex for you, and you're damn well better be happy to get it.
Well, because this is really not about sex, and certainly not in the way that anywhere in the Bible describes it. This is about women exerting control over the men. No, you can't have that simply because I don't want to give it to you. Or my personal favorite, I'll do that for you if you get me insert expensive item here, right? There are women who will happily, with their beta men, trade sexual favors for high-end expensive gifts, trips, etc. And these men line up for this shit
No,
because he finally got to do that thing he's always wanted to do. No, that ain't how this works.
no. They talks about this again.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna keep going. Trying to get through, but he'll bring it up again. You can say what you just say towards the end, and he reiterates properties of marriage, duties, live together unless the calling God require otherwise for a time, that they should love one another and to the height of dearness, that in the Lord and in the communion of true religion. 3, that the husband bear himself as the head and preserver of his wife, instructing her to all godliness and integrity of life, that the wife also be to her husband a help. Notice this caveat, according to her place, especially furthering him in true worship of God, and next on all the occasion of civil life. And 4, that they defraud not each other, that they defraud not each other of conjugal benevolence, as the apostle commands. That's 1 Corinthians 7, what we were talking about.
I like the word defraud there because
Yep.
it simultaneously acknowledges that there are legitimate reasons not to, like I was saying, injury, right? As one. But when a woman says, "Oh, well, I don't feel like it tonight," or "I have a headache," she is actually committing a fraud, a lie. I mean, okay, she might have a headache, but sex helps headaches, So it's like, do you
Mhm.
really have a headache? Really, or are you really saying I want to take I want to fraudulently take control over something that I should not have control over?
Well, it's contractual fraud.
Yep.
It is.
She gave the rights to her body to her husband in the marriage vows.
And he gave his
Now
to
she's
hers as well.
withholding those rights. Hey,
Mhm.
he gave his rights to her. But now she is retaining her rights, which she already gave away. That is contract fraud.
I want to note here that the woman also has rights to the man as well, in the
Well,
same way.
exactly.
Not that
Just
women
saying.
today exercise on them.
Right.
Different problem. But
Well,
If you want to
someone
find, if you
might.
want to find, if you
a
want to
few
find
do.
egalitarianism in the Bible between men and women, it's on 1 Corinthians 7 on not defrauding each other of sex. Right there. There's your egalitarianism for you.
Tacticus.
That's not the one they want.
Yeah, this is not the egalitarianism you're looking for.
But notice, he's instructing her, he's preserving her, he's the head. He's instructing. That means he's the teacher. She's not to be his teacher. Notice that she's to be her in this relationship with godliness and religion. She's to be her husband a help according to her place. Tradcon women, do not do that. The ladies in the church do not do that. They browbeat their husband with their fake moral superiority. We did an episode called Steve led the episode. It was what Purity Tornado.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see that where she's not a help to her. She's not a religious help to her husband, according to her place. You'll see that demonstrated in that episode that Steve led it. You should go watch it.
Yeah.
She should be his help.
She's more spiritual. Therefore, she's closer to God. Therefore, she's more moral and can tell her husband what's right and wrong and what to do. See, that's a spiral or a tornado.
According to Bootser, she's not doing her job by browbeating him and usurping without having regard to her place as his subordinate. She is subordinate to him. All right. We're getting close to the end here. A few more pages. So Zacharias Ursinus, he's from 1534 to 1583. He's only quoted once in the Men's Assembly. That'd be misleading if you want to think about it numerically of his influence. He had great influence upon English theology, as he is the man largely behind the writing of the Heidelberg Catechism, which was rendered and published in English in 1572. So it's a Reformed confession, and those the Westminster Assembly also wrote a Reformed confession just in English. Okay. He gives a proper understanding of the fifth commandment, where he speaks of inferiors, superiors, and equals. That's the hierarchy. Yet there he leaves out husband and wife, but he takes it up in the seventh commandment, which is thou shalt not commit adultery, as the seventh commandment has much to do with the marital relationship. And he says there on the seventh commandment, the common and mutual duties of married persons include mutual love, conjugal fidelity, which requires that each love one love the other only, and that constantly. A community of good, together with sympathy in each other's sorrows and misfortunes. Ooh, you don't see that with women these days, anyways. The training and education of children, bearing each other's infirmities with a desire to remove them. And he says, it is the duty of the husband to nourish and cherish his wife and children. 2, to govern them. 3, to defend them. It is the duty of the wife to assist her husband in providing and preserving what pertains to the family. 2, to obey and reverence her husband. When these duties are not performed, there is a great breach of what tends to the lawful use of marriage. So again, the hierarchy, the patriarchy is affirmed. He has authority. He governs. He defends, but he also nourishes. He works. He's a protector, provider, and ruler. See, complementarians want to say protector, provider, but they say leader. No, governing. He's a ruler, not a servant leader where he has all the responsibility and no authority.
Didn't that go back to Genesis 3? Her desire shall be for her husband, and he shall rule over her.
Mm-hmm.
That's reality. And he shall rule over her. So that gives him the authority to command her and rule and govern. I don't know. You can try and change that and say we're more evolved, but hey, it said that in the beginning, in Genesis. Has anything changed since then?
Well, there's the fall in Genesis 3, which corrupts everything.
Oh, this was the curse after the fall.
Right.
So
That
Nothing has
rebellious nature has
changed
to be
really
especially
since then.
well, the rebellious nature is now brought forth. They no longer live in harmony, so they definitely need restraint now. By
Right,
then,
Well,
but that's it. But that was God's curse after the fall. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. So, okay,
right,
that was the way it was after the fall in Genesis.
right,
It's the way it is
right,
now.
we
right.
haven't exactly undone the fall here, right? And here's
No,
the thing, that here's how I see it. This is kind of like a rubber band, right? The further you stretch it, the more potential energy you're loading into that thing. So what, and Steve has talked about this before, the men will rule over the women. But we have given them so much slack for so long that when that rule comes, it's going to look brutal, because that's what's going to be necessary to turn the ship around. We were talking earlier about how long it takes to turn the demographics around. Right. Because you have to do some pretty ugly things to get to the point where you can turn it around.
This brutality will come about after I'm dead.
Very likely, yeah. Very likely.
It's not imminent. It's going to be a progression back to this type of thing. It's probably 40, 50 years from now.
Ooh, that would be ironic if you understand Neil Howe's turnings theory. The prophet generation, which we call the boomers, there's always this great moral awakening, and I think it would be hysterical if the great moral awakening is the return of kings in their own homes, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
I mean, Nick, you and I are very likely to live to see that. That's 40 to 50 years from now. We'll be old men, but we're likely to live to see it.
Yeah,
I
probably.
would hope so. A delight to see order restored. All right. So we see marital duties. Now we see talks about women in the church wanting positions. Nope. He says the apostle Paul plainly teaches in his epistle, I mean, people want to make these convoluted, crazy arguments to go through gymnastics, but he says the apostle Paul plainly teaches in his epistles to Timothy and Titus, to whom and to what persons the ministry ought to be committed by the church. To sum up the whole, in a few words, we say that the ministry of the church should be committed, one, to men and not to women. I suffer not a woman to teach. Pretty simple. He also says, since the administration of the sacraments forms a part of the ecclesiastical ministry, those who are not called to this, and especially women, ought not to take upon themselves the right and authority to baptize. Not happening here, he says. Oh, but my feelings. No.
Okay. Smoking Patriot. I am actually going to say yes. Now, I'm not entirely. There's a whole bunch of history around J.R.R. Tolkien's work, and I'm not going to say that this was primarily what he was intending, but the Return of the King. He did note how in the books he returns to his house, right? He returns to Gondor, but he returns to his house in Gondor, right? So yes, in many ways, the Return of the King was about referring to the return of the man to his house. Now, yes, he had to go through literal hell to get there. Okay. That part is what's coming up sooner, but that will lead to the return of the kings.
But prior to his return, he was a weak man without, beguiled, under a spell, whatever. It was not governed well.
Aragorn himself
returned,
never. and never was. But there was weakness all around him. The fellowship breaks at some point in the story, right? You know, even so, and even then, the idea is that the king just finds the strength to tie the wounds back together in his house, in his kingdom, and raise it up. And he does that, particularly over the course of the last book, The Return of the King.
Sure.
All right, guys. last theologian. He's a Scotsman. Robert Rollock of 1555 to 1599 was rector of University of Edinburgh, and he comments on Colossians, particularly verses 18 through 19, where he gives an exhortation upon three estates, the estate of husband and wife being the first estate taken up in the text. And he says, now in this text, he descends to certain special estates of men and women, directing his exhortation particularly to them, and namely three estates. The first is to husbands and wives, the second is to parents and children, the third is masters and servants. To come then to the purpose, it is to be understood that from the beginning of this world, that's natural order, natural law, guys, creation by God, okay. To be understood that from the beginning of this world, there hath ever been these three principal estates and ranks of men and women in the world. So creation being revealed. Okay. And humanity developing. The three estates are principal estates of mankind. And note this, principal estates of mankind, it calls them from the beginning of the world, hath ever been these principal estates. And what do? They do not promote equality. Rollock writes of their inequality as follows: in these three estates, all be not equal, but there is inequality. Some are superiors and some are inferiors. The superiors he hath made to be husbands, parents, and masters. The inferiors he hath made to be wives, children, and servants. For if all were equal, no policy could stand, nor order on the earth but a confusion. And what do we live in right now, guys? Even as Dabney also prophesied or deduced.
Yeah, it's a little
way
confusing
that,
out there for people.
Yeah, there's not order.
We live in confusion. And I've said this before. The Declaration of Independence has that phrase, all men are created equal. It's in the second paragraph. The first paragraph, it uses the word people and mankind or something like that. So men does not mean the same. They've already used other words. So it doesn't mean all people are created equal. What does it mean?
It means men, and the founders would have understood it to mean males.
It means brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's an attack on primogeniture. The firstborn gets a larger share of the inheritance. All men are created equal. Because Jefferson attacked that exact thing in Virginia and basically abolished it. And it only relates to men, and it's primarily talking about the rules of inheritance, that there is no hierarchy in inheritance, no hierarchy in the order of the children. Patriarchy, remember, went from father to son, yes, but who, after the father died, who was the patriarch of the family? It was the eldest son, the firstborn.
Right.
Oh, remember back in the Bible, Jesus was the firstborn. How many times is firstborn mentioned? All men are created equal was an abolishment of the privilege and responsibility and authority of the firstborn. It wasn't
True.
equality of men and women.
No, but it also it did assume a certain natural equality. But yeah, I could see where he's also attacking primogeniture as well, like natural duties that flow from following the natural law that mankind, free man, have in common. There you go. So this confusion is what the feminists and egalitarians of our day bring, and the Anabaptists of his day brought confusion. Husband and wives are not equal. And he affirms also a general superiority of men of the male sex over women, though not a subjection of every woman to every man, but to their own husbands. He says, in truth, the male kind hath a preferment above the female, it hath honor above the other. Look, Paul, 1 Timothy 2, verses 13 and 14, where he gives two reasons of this preferment. The first is from creation. Adam was first created, then Eve. The second from the transgression. The woman fell first, and it is sure first in sin, last in honor. Notwithstanding this, wives are not commanded to do this duty to every man, but to their own husbands.
Well, would you want your man or would you want your woman to be forced to have sex with every man who demands it? Of course not.
Absolutely not.
And it wouldn't make any sense in any sort of ordered society because that's actually just backdoor egalitarianism. Oh, well, she's equally free used by any man ever. No.
No. So this will also particularly piss off like the tradcons. Like, oh, of course, yeah. I just because I'm married, I'm subordinate to him, but no, the female sex that is in no way inferior. I'm like, no, it does have a certain inferiority of preferment. It has there's a specific preferment that is creation, and so it has honor above the other. It doesn't mean that they don't have superior in other things. They have strengths that men do not. Okay, but they're not the same strengths. And above, the general superiority of mankind is affirmed. The superiority of man is based upon not the fall only, but first that of creation itself. Then it is because of the transgression. Rollock bases his understanding of 1 Timothy 2, 13 to 14. In another place, he affirms this argument, speaking upon the wives' obedience and subjection. Says, first, it is grounded upon the ordinance of God, first made before the fall, and after the fall, renewed again. Secondly, is grounded upon the law of nature. Right there. The law hath written it in the heart at the first creation. Thou shalt be subject to thy husband. Thus it is clear the superiority and rule of the husband and the inferiority and subjection of the wife are firmly grounded in creation, fall, and the light of nature. All right. However, superiority should not go to the husband's head, for he's commanded to love and not be bitter. He writes the duties of men as follows. Now I come to the men. Husbands, love your wives. That is the thing he charges them to do. Then he says, be not bitter unto them. That he forbids. The thing then he bids them do is love. So subjection in the wife should be met with love and care in things spiritual and temporal. This is general. Subjection in the inferior should be met with love and care of the superior in things earthly and temporal, and in things spiritual. For it is not the Lord's will that the inferior should be bound to a duty, and the superior should go free. But he is as fast fastened to do a duty to his inferior, and more. The greater preferment, the greater burden. All the honors men get are the greater burdens to them. Under the term of love is understood all kind of duty belonging to the wife, providing it begin at the heart and not at the mouth nor hand. Therefore, the word love comprehends the most entire affection. Oh, so men aren't just supposed to be tyrants because they're superiors? Imagine that.
Well, it doesn't work.
And
And
leadership
we've talked
comes
about
with
this
a big
before.
burden.
Greater burden. We've talked about this at the beginning of this episode, right? Didn't
Right.
we?
Well, and we also did a whole nother episode on this as well, where we were talking about. I mean, Andrew sums it up as noblesse oblige, but how, in order for a society to function, that burden that we're talking about is the burden of the duties to the people over which you have authority. You know,
Right.
like if you're a king, right? Okay, you've got this castle, you get to live in much nicer conditions than the average person. Okay, and then somebody attacks you. Well, now you have, your burden is to have maintained this castle, maintained this army, so that your people can come into the castle for protection in times of trouble. It is also your job to have stores of food, right? So that in times of famine, you have food to give to your people. There's all these what did they call them? All the honors men get. You know, all the honors the king got. That's great, but they come with a long list of requirements, duties, and burdens. Kind of makes you think,
Yeah.
okay, what are the burdens that God suffers under?
Okay, think about this. They don't end. He has the
Yeah.
authority, therefore he has a responsibility. If he
Correct.
doesn't take that responsibility seriously, okay, he is accountable. And if you're a Christian, he's gotten all these privileges, his accountability will be, he will have to answer for that on Judgment Day. If you have the authority and the responsibility, you cannot avoid accountability, and you will be judged on how you exercised your office.
That's correct.
And ladies, if you assume the authority, whether or not you accept the responsibility or accept the accountability, it's there, and you're going to have to answer for that someday.
Boom.
Do you really want to do that?
No, but the church says, "Oh, you're just a poor, innocent victim. That man is a tyrant. How dare he, you know,
Right.
make you listen
In
to
the
a chapter of
church,
the Bible being read and tell you no, not to spend that money. How dare he discipline the kids? Oh, it must have been too rough. He gave them 3 swats instead of 2."
the church will not hold you accountable. Your lady friends will not hold you accountable. The majority of men won't hold you accountable. They'll come to your rescue. Will God do the same on Judgment Day?
He judges without partiality.
Oh, whoa, Nick. So you're saying that all the partiality that these women experience on Earth, they're not going to experience after?
Nope, he'll judge you according to who you are, according to his word, and whatever duties left undone, whether you usurped authority or whether you have that authority and how you use that authority, even if it wasn't yours to take.
Okay. So what that means is that when the church goes out there and tells all these women that they can do all these things men can do, the church is literally speaking what, anti-truth to what, like, because that's what they're telling these women. You know, when you're a complementarian and you say, oh, you submit to each other, that's, you're saying she has equal duty and equal responsibility. I'm reading,
Yep.
Aaron's he's a new viewer, hey, or first time commenter. Welcome in. You know, that what they're saying. And so what they're saying is that somehow women should be subject to the same judgments as men under God. Okay. But is that what you women really think you're getting? because the women don't think that that's what's going to happen to them. So the church has been telling them something else, if that's what they think.
I want to paraphrase a polka song. In heaven there is no beer. That's why we drink it here. Now, this doesn't rhyme, but in heaven there is no pussy pass. That's why we use it here.
Are you saying the women are getting while the getting is good?
No, Luther said, "In heaven, there's no
Yeah.
beer, so we drink it here." Yeah. Oh, now, yeah, that's true. Very good. Now, what we're talking about is these duties and tyranny, and I scrolled down and I forgot I had this extra quote there. He talks about the tyranny. He says, "Now at the end of the verse, the thing forbidden is that is contrary to love, to wit, bitterness. Love and sweetness is commended. Bitterness, rigorousness, and cruelty is forbidden. There are many husbands who are tyrants over their wives. That should not be. They ought not to use tyranny, though it were over a dog or cat." Oh, so patriarchy is against rigorousness and cruelty and bitterness and tyranny and treating wives like they're a dog or cat. Oh no! But they're still going to claim that anyways, even though it's right here condemned, right? And he's not the only one who'd say something this. I mean, William Googe says similar things as well.
Well, okay. Shu left this a while ago, but pretty much we have that's what you're talking about here with this inversion in family hierarchy. And it's embarrassing, but I read embarrassing as I don't know that people are embarrassed by it because I don't think that they know that they should be. Like I agree that it's embarrassing to us as a species and certainly embarrassing to us before God, but do people care anymore? And will they care unless we bring this is how far gone we are. This is why it's going to take so long to turn things around. You have to convince people to be embarrassed about their behavior. That's going to be the work of a generation right there.
Some of it may happen faster because out of necessity. When things get tough, the women will look to men. The men can call the shots and be in the leadership position. They won't know how to do it well, and they probably will overstep, but it may happen faster than you think.
Oh, well,
but it still will take years and decades to really sort out. And
10 years is about the slowest I could see it happening. So, I mean, you've got a bunch of people who never will be, and so they will never be embarrassed, even if you convince the majority that they should be. And you need those people to die off. So, that's why I'm looking, 40, 50 years down the road for the awakening, and we will have, the crisis will force women to look to men, but it will not solve the way these women look at men. That's going to take longer.
Part of the solution is something that's going to take a long time to happen. Namely, in order that women have children, you actually have to restrict the equality of opportunity. In other words, you can't let them go to college because they will choose to go to college. No, no, no. We have to hurt your feelings and say, that's not for you, the majority of you. It's not an absolute. But okay, if you're just smart enough to get into college to get a social worker degree, sorry, you're not going to college. We have to restrict women. Why? So they can not be indoctrinated as feminists. So instead, they will choose to be wives and mothers. So they'll have children because that is a greater role for them. They're more important as mothers than as social workers. And you cannot let women make that decision themselves. Society will come to this conclusion eventually.
Yeah, we're a ways from that particular outcome. I do think we will see women start to value men again, particularly post-crisis, but I do not think that they can do that at any point pre-crisis. So, guys, don't expect this to happen anytime soon. And by soon, I mean next year. Like women are not going to have a great awakening of their own accord. That's just not how women work.
Yeah, right.
So,
Right.
so guys,
Men are not going to have one either.
True.
all we can do is give you the information, and that's what we've done tonight. That's what we do Wednesdays. We give you the information. We try to give you some advice. We can't make you take the pill, though. We can't. We can lead a horse to water, right? But you can't make the horse drink the water.
And look, particularly on the church, we were admonishing the church earlier in the show, and it's like we can show the church exactly where and how it's fucked up so bad that people don't pay attention to it. But we can't make the church turn around and say, "Oh, yeah, you're right. We repent and we'll do things differently." Like we can't do that.
No, it takes a conviction of the mind, and in Christian theology, you also say, enlightening of the mind, also a regeneration. So what we've talked about is, look, God made the world a patriarchy, a hierarchy where there's superiors and inferiors. There's supposed to be father rule and family, church, and the civil state or commonwealth or society, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, men are the superiors. Men have authority and power in the home. They're to love, protect, provide, and rule over their wives. And women are to submit to their husbands, obey them, know their place. Yeah, women like to talk a lot. We know that. Okay. But men are not to be tyrants. Oh, that's condemned by this Christian patriarchy. You think? And with more duty comes more obligation, more burdens. As a superior, you have greater responsibility. But you do have authority. And
Man,
I'm going to go
Nick,
back to this.
this authority, it sounds like a lot of work. How about if I'm a young man, wouldn't it be easier if I just become the house husband and marry a boss babe who goes out and makes all the money?
She'll ditch your
You
ass.
sound, she'll ditch you. And plus, that's effeminacy. You're acting like a woman.
The reason I said she'll ditch your ass is because she will. It doesn't work. Short term, it sounds great, and I'm sure there's lots of guys out there who are going, it'd be really nice to get taken care of like I take care of my wife, or I don't have to work very hard every day. Somebody else goes out and takes on all the responsibilities and brings home all the money. Yeah, guys, it sounds great. She's gonna ditch your ass the first chance she gets, and you're going to be right back to where you were. These are immutable laws of nature. Women are just
Plus,
that way.
plus, most guys just can't do that. It's not what you were designed to do.
Hmm.
I mean, I can't imagine doing that. Although, I don't have to be in charge. That part would be fine. But not doing what I was created to do just seems like it would. I don't know. It's so irritating that I can't imagine not doing what I was created to do.
Well, Tacticus got it right there. The husband is just an accessory. You will be exchanged, traded in, or donated to charity, whichever one she desires. Like, okay. Is that what you really want? No? Well,
I'm going to share my screen again. I'll go back to this for one of these first quotes. It has all this advice. If you want to get married, that's great. There's advice here and there's reformers. It's good. But the problem is we live on the flip side of holy wedlock not being vigilantly preserved from all blots and disturbances, where it says if holy wedlock, this is Martin Bootser, for if holy wedlock, the fountain and seminary of good subjects, be not vigilantly preserved from all blots and disturbances, what can be hoped, as I said before, of the springing up of good men and a right reformation of the commonwealth? We live where it has not been vigilantly preserved from all blots and disturbances. It has been destroyed at the foundations. There is no hope for turning around this society if marriage is not fixed, if the laws are not changed. That's why tacticists say that right here. Feminist marriage makes the husband just an accessory. You will be exchanged, traded in, or donated to charity. That's actually a nice way of putting it. It could actually be a lot worse.
yes.
You can be thrown under the bus, accused of false crap so that they can kidnap your kids from you with the assistance of the state. Doesn't have to be proved. Just make the accusation. You'll lose custody, or your kids will be stolen from you as the head of the household. Your family ruined. Possibly your posterity ruined of raising up good children, springing up of good men, and you will be enslaved to pay for that, while feeling the pain of dropping off your kids, if you have visitation, dropping them off to somebody that hates your guts and wants you dead, except they don't want you dead so they can take money from you.
They don't want you dead. They want you as their personal slave.
Yes.
Which, in my opinion, is worse than death. But
there's, throughout history, there have been a lot of theologians commenting on the responsibility of priests, pastors, and especially bishops. Bishops are shepherds. Shepherds have a certain responsibility. If they don't exercise that properly, they will be judged. There's a special place in hell.
Yeah.
Because some of them will be found wanting and guilty, and they did not exercise their office. Do you really think that these women who usurp their husband's authority and harm the children by depriving the children of their fathers, do you really think that on Judgment Day they won't have to answer for that? I don't, but the women don't think they will. Okay. Wish you good luck, but I don't think that's the case. Is the church telling them that? Hell no.
Oh, the church. I think there's a financial aspect. They want them to have lots of kids and, get these men under the thing and get the money. So they want to have lots of kids and say, hey, you're going to be okay. She'll just follow you. Then she leaves them. She accuses all sorts of crap because they have to have some moral justification, right? And all the church white knights and simps for her and all that stuff. They throw the man under the bus and they never speak up for the kids being taken from the man. Those children naturally belong to the father in marriage. They're not, if you want them to belong to the mother, then she should not have gotten married. And what do you call those children raised without a father? Bastards. So you have functional
No,
bastards.
it's those conceived out of wedlock.
Right. I'm talking
are
about, yes, that's true.
bastards.
Technically, you're true. But functionally, when the father is removed,
Yeah, right. I'll grant you that.
they're raised akin to bastards. And the church, you support this crap. You have not preserved marriage. You have not preserved the family with all your pompous righteousness. You do not support the men who go through hell. You simp for these women. You are responsible for destroying the church, destroying men, and preventing the reforming of the Commonwealth by proper families. You do not
Uh,
stand up against the civil magistrates, do you? I did. You don't.
I want to point out a parallel here. The Reformation. What caused the Reformation? Well, it really was caused by money issues. Catholic Church is trying to raise money to build St. Peter's Basilica and then was selling indulgences. And love of money. Okay, then I'm sure there's other things, and you're going to bring them up, or someone will. But what's happening now? Why is the Protestant Church and the Catholic Church not doing what they can or affirming the father's rights? No, they're being seduced by the money. The money comes from the women. They think that if they stood up for men, they would lose money. That's the same error that caused the rebellion of the Universal Catholic Church. It started the Lutherans and the Calvinists, and yeah, that was at the core of the issue.
There's more to that. There's also the
I said there is more, but that
yeah,
was one of the foundational things.
it
That's
was a
why they
thing.
didn't
Money
try to
was.
reform it within. Elena asked, where does women's money come from? What's hers is hers. What's his is ours. What's ours is hers. So it's all her money.
This explains some things.
Yeah. All right, guys. Any other thoughts?
I think we've interrupted you a lot tonight.
That's okay.
That's just how we do our shows. One of us will get on a diatribe and then the others will interrupt us. It's just how it goes.
All right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed listening to us tonight. We should be this Saturday on Elena's channel, Elena's Bars Fitness at 11:15 Central, 9:15 Pacific AM. So please join us there. I'm sure we'll have some interesting topics on that channel, probably talking about men and women and the sexual
Yeah, well,
dynamics
I
there.
think I think we're talking about a woman's need to be desired, physically desired, to be the object of desire.
So
Now,
this is like
Christians
a
talk about, oh, she shouldn't be the object of desire; she should be the subject of love. Uh, both, both.
so this is like a counterpoint to women need to be the restraint, right? Like they don't want the
No.
restraint, but they want
Restraint
the desire.
first, desire second, love third.
Okay.
She needs to feel all three.
Yes.
So it's not really one or the other. It's no, she needs everything.
All right. That's
Well,
Saturday. We have no idea what we're doing next week for Wednesday. I'm probably due up. And I have a couple of topics I can choose from that we've written down. One of them was exploring DEI hires. We could do that if you get. We could do that if you guys are interested into it. Specifically, the idea came about from the recent spat of aviation crashes.
ooh.
Isn't that whole DEI debate? Isn't that in the past?
Yeah.
Aren't we done worrying about that now?
No.
I wish.
They want us to be done worrying about it, but we're not.
Yeah, but it's not in the news now. I'm just worried about Israel and Iran and stuff like that. I don't
Steve,
even
that's out of
care
the
about
news now.
Russia and Ukraine anymore.
What is current thing right now? I'm not even, because Iran, Israel, that's not current thing anymore. That's over. What is current thing right now?
We're kind of in a lull, I think. Because right now, they're trying to pass that big, beautiful bill or whatever they call it. So we're trying to be quiet. Well, we can just sneak this one through. And then after it's through, before people start talking about it and looking into it and critiquing it, then we'll get the next crisis.
Wonder how much DEI there is in that bill, because there's some in there.
Mm-hmm. I've heard about some.
Yeah, I don't want to make it about current thing, the bill, but I mean, because I'm coming at it from the crashes aspect of it, and I actually will probably pull up the preliminary report on the Toronto crash, and it'll be an interesting look because of the amount of time that the report spends dancing around the fact that it was a woman who crashed the plane.
What is that? The one where the plane ended up upside down with one wing broken off?
Yes, sir. That's the one.
Oh.
I mean, they go out of their way to say to not blame it on the pilots right now. But when you read the piles of evidence that they have, because the preliminary report's mostly dealing with, here's the information we've gathered. It's like there was nothing mechanically wrong with that plane whatsoever. Nothing. It was a perfectly functional aircraft that was driven into the ground. Why is that? So, if you guys want to, we can go into that next week.
Good.
Okay, then we'll do that next week. So
Good thing we don't have female helicopter pilots.
okay, you want me to crack that can of worms too, huh?
Oh yeah.
Oh shoot. Okay, I have to pull this up. Shoot. Oh, my. Okay, Shu.
On so many levels. Okay.
Yes, that was a good one.
What says women come in for a hard landing? No.
All right, guys. Join us Saturday next week.
Yep.
Please like, share, subscribe.
And if you have any comments about tonight's, I've been answering a lot of the comments recently, but I'm going to have to hand off to Nick for this one because this is he's definitely more qualified than I am to speak to your comments on this one. So, but yeah, leave comments and Nick will get back to you. So, yeah. See y'all next week.
Later, guys.
There was a firefight! Fucking